Today, I want to welcome our amazing speaker for today, Anita Chauhan. Anita has a wealth of experience managing big brands across AI, tech, finance, lifestyle, and end of life categories. Currently, she is the Chief Marketing Officer at Oompel and Medbox RX Pharmacy, where she defines and executes their marketing strategy, target audience, and channels. And she also helps them build a world class inclusive marketing function that truly reflects their values and vision. Anita, we are super lucky to have you here, and I invite you to begin the session.
Oh my goodness, thank you. What a lovely introduction. Thanks, Alina. I'm so excited to be here. As Alina mentioned, this is a series that we're putting on. We're really excited to kind of share this knowledge and to help a lot of you early stage startups figure out kind of who you're talking to, which seems to be a very big pain point. So this is the first of four, and this is part of the bigger Y-Space Marketing Fundamental series that we're putting on. And so we're looking at positioning and messaging when you don't know your audience. Today we'll be running through defining a flexible brand identity, crafting a value proposition, and from there, we'll do a quick recap. And throughout this whole time, I would, just like Alina mentioned, please feel free to ask questions, dig deeper on things. If you have any concerns or need some clarification, I'm here to help and support and answer anything from there on out. All right. I mean, I had such a great introduction already, but here is a little more about me. On top of all the stuff Alina mentioned, I do work as a fractional CMO. So I've been in tech for about 12 years. I have been working with Y-Space as an entrepreneur in residence and a marketing mentor for early stage startups. I just really think that after so many years of having tons of conversations, meeting with so many different startups and even like coming in as that marketer, I've noticed that one of the biggest pain points is being able to articulate what makes you unique in the market. So even before we get to positioning and messaging, a lot of startups and a lot of brands don't even know who they are. So we're going to dive into that today a little bit, but just a little bit of me. And now taking a look at the rest of the series. So this is the first of four. Next week, if you haven't signed up already, we're going to look at picking the right channels for you when you're an early stage company, you don't know how to get to that audience. It'll build off a little bit of what we talk about here today, and also really highlight free ways to do it. And this is something I've contended with most of my career. I've been maybe the first marketer on the team with very little to no budget until I got to like a Series A, and suddenly I was like, oh, I have money to spend. You're giving me a budget, and suddenly the sky was my limit. But I know how tough it is at the very beginning, so I would love to share my wealth of knowledge around that for all of you here today. So I hope to see you there as well next week. And then the week after, we'll look at strategic communication for a diverse customer base, which will include things like, if you have multiple audiences, multiple personas, how do you speak to each of them without losing each other, right? Because one of the things that we'll talk about in today's session is you have to be very targeted and specific about your messaging. But how can you do that when you have several different audiences? So we'll dive into that for the third session. And for the fourth one, we'll actually look at how you can actually track all the hard work that you've done thus far and see if it's effective. All right. Without much further ado, why don't we just dive in? And the first section, we're going to take a look at what a brand identity is, honing on your why, and how it can be flexible throughout your tenure and as you scale. All right, so I'm pretty sure so many people have heard about brand identity. They know all about these things. And yes, this is a positioning conversation and workshop, but to even get to the point where you can do positioning and messaging, you need to have a strong brand identity. Brand identity is an amorphous, scary thing, especially if you are not a marketer or if you've never done this before. And a lot of early stage startups I know might have never even had to think about this. And maybe if you're coming from an engineering side, you're coming from a product side, this might be completely out of your wheelhouse. So just as the basic understanding, a brand identity is all the entire gamut, the whole collection of all the elements that a company puts together and puts out externally, and sometimes even internally, that creates this image that is then shared with the consumer. So this can be anything under the sun. Like it can be a post on social media. It can be literally something that your CEO says on a podcast. It's everything that goes out, your color palette, your logo. It's all part of who your company is and how they speak to their consumers. So this is really important because it's actually about initial perception. It's about how your brand comes out the gate to speak to those potential customers and consumers. It also creates that trust that they can trust what you're putting out there. And over time, fulfills that brand promise. So what that promise is what your brand says, I stand for this. This is tied back to my core values. And this is how you repeatedly perform and give that back to the consumers. It's a consistent back and forth that you're doing with your consumers, and your brand identity, when outlined correctly, will be a really strong differentiator for you, especially in crowded markets when we know where maybe you're competing with 3 or 4 different types of products similar to yours, but your brand identity can actually help you stand out amongst those other brands. So we all know this, a strong brand makes you competitive. You have to really understand, though, to be competitive, you have to understand certain things like what advantages do you have? What do you do better than anyone else? And what are your unique selling points? All of these things will help you understand kind of just, why people should care about you, which will be the basis of your brand identity. So things like an advantage could be, we have sped up payment processing by 2 seconds so you can send money back home really fast. And it also could be, hey, we actually have reduced payment processing fees for restaurants by 2%. That's great. That's more money in your pocket. So you do that better. It could even be something like, we give an exceptional customer service. Our onboarding is amazing and frictionless. And that can make all the difference when you're actually building this brand out. And people will come to you for those things because these matter to them, because they're bigger concepts. The things that you provide are bigger concepts to them and their problems, and they're solving that problem with using your tools. And we all know this, it's more than just a logo. I think that some people just think like, okay, it's my visual identity. It's brand just means I have a brand guidebook. Here's how it goes. I'm following this. It's on my website. I have a palette. I mentioned before, it's initial perception. It's how you first speak to your customers, your target customer base. It's that first interaction you have with them to show them who you are. And actually, like 51% of people latch on to a company's visual identity first is what speaks to them. It's kind of that adage, we tend to, as much as we shouldn't, judge books by covers. So it's one of the first things that we see and we connect with when it comes to a brand. But when you actually have a strong brand that goes beyond the logo, it includes things like your voice, your tone. It makes the first impression with even how you speak to them, and your personality comes through with it. And it's important because more than ever, people are looking to connect with their brands at this level. And when it comes to differentiation in crowded marketplace, like I mentioned, it's really important for you to say, like, here's who we are, here's what we stand for. And that goes beyond just your logo. And another very big thing that comes into play with brand identity is all about consistency. Establishing a really strong point of view and a brand that is then shared consistently in the same way across all your channels and everything, including like emails, abandoned cart emails, things like, just even social media posts. I think I always think about social media being as this like thing that we do all the time and seems very like easy, but it is important for that brand to come through everything. Because when you're consistent, there's a trust that's being built that extends bigger than just like, oh, we use this word across the board, or we use this imagery for our target audience. It's more like, I trust this brand and I'm giving them money and I can trust what they're providing me. Shows reliability. And just looking at some of these numbers, just to like quantify it, trust is a major factor in so many consumer decisions these days. There's a direct correlation between brand trust and actual sales. Consumers are more than twice as likely to buy from, stay loyal to, and advocate for brands that they trust. And 81% of consumers need to trust a brand before they actually invest in them. And it's kind of this concept of every dollar spent is like a vote, or and a bid for what you believe in these days. And that's a really big thing, because I think like we think about how this next generation of shoppers, millennials and Gen Z and Alpha, are spending money, and where they're going to, the brands they go towards do represent parts of themselves. So, shoppers are 4 to 6 times more likely to purchase from purpose-driven companies that align with their goals, their values. They will actually choose to not spend with companies. And I mean, there's tons of boycotts going on right now, and you can see the impact of that. If your brand doesn't align with with someone's worldview and their values, they will stop spending, which is a big hit to you. And 76% of consumers wouldn't do business with a company that opposes their views. And 25% of consumers have a zero tolerance policy for unethical behavior. So, like I said, there's boycotts. We're seeing this in live right now as it's happening. Brands like Starbucks have posted record low sales during the last little while because of the global issues going on. And finally, 60% of consumers have taken an action, either positive or negative, based on a brand's behavior. So your CEO could say something, or like the Lululemon, I'm not sure if everyone was dialed into this, what the Lululemon CEO said, made a little bit of a very distasteful racist comment, and it impacts brand perception. So all of this to say that, brand is so inherently important, and so important as a building block to getting to your messaging and your positioning. So now you understand that, branding is really important. One of the biggest things before getting to positioning is understanding your target audience. And this is a big part of your brand identity as well. It's very important that you know who you're speaking to. You might have, at this point, wherever you are in your journey, you might have some semblance of an idea, but maybe it is still a little murky. Maybe you know or have a gut feeling that this is where you should be going, or you might have already done a lot of testing and market research to know that you've picked the right markets. You might have several different segments and different audiences within that. But ultimately, it will influence all the branding that you do, all of the positioning and messaging that will come thereafter will also flow back into who your target audience is. From your audience, then you can start building things like ICPs, which is not Insane Clown Posse, if you know that band. Every time I say this in like a meeting, people are like, do you mean this band? And I'm not sure if everyone's aware of who they are. I mean, ideal candidate profiles. And I think personas are a lot of people push for personas, and they're really great when you're starting off. I typically tell a lot of startups I work with to start, if you have no idea yet about the person, and you need to understand your audience a little bit better and kind of put a face to who you're selling to. Ideally, you start with an early start, a very proto persona, which will just kind of share a lot of demographics if you're unaware of what a persona is. The demographics, who the person is, what their hopes and dreams are, maybe things that are relevant to how their purchasing power, like maybe they're mid-senior level in a job, maybe they're a first-generation immigrant and they make X number of dollars. Then that will help you kind of create a structure around who you're marketing towards, instead of it being just like a gut feeling or a hope that you're going in the right direction. In the follow-up email after this event, workshop is done, I will be sharing a Miro board. Miro is a whiteboarding tool where you can actually do some persona work if that's something you haven't done yet, and they'll actually help you through a empathy-driven persona exercise as well. So this is all going to again go back to your brand identity, which will then flow into your positioning and your messaging, because you have to know who this person is. And until you get to the point of really understanding who your audience is, having a semblance of an idea is better than nothing. Now, I have a word of caution when it comes to personas. I typically don't really love relying too heavily on them, and I'll share why. I find them a little static. I think that they can be a little stereotypical and not inclusive and tend to speak to the majority rather than actual humans. So they're just not real. And things like, who's Bill in Toronto, who's 46 and works in tech sales? This might not be a real person, an actual person that you're going to be selling to. So it's a really great start. But I would encourage every startup to flow past that as you get more data, as you do more research, market research, user interviews, as you make more sales and you hone in on that persona, you'll get to know maybe more. The lens that you will use thereafter will be something called a jobs to be done framework, or you can create scenarios, experiences, or use cases. And again, in the follow-up email, I will have resources and all of these things to share a little bit more about what I mean. But when I say jobs to be done, the consideration is what role does your service, product, or offering serve in this person's life? What are they doing with it? What job does it do for them? And one example I'll give you is one of the last, before I worked as a consultant fractionally, I was working for a Series A fintech, and we identified very early on that a lot of people in retirement have home equity that they can borrow against. So we were seeing a lot of people who retired 65 plus and suddenly had an idea or wanted a second life or career, but they had no startup capital. Some of them had ideas, but they couldn't ever get the money to actually execute them. And typically a lot of banks will turn you away if you have no income coming in. So they just had this idea and they couldn't do anything with it. So one thing we identified was we know that there are people out there that have equity built into their home. We offered mortgages, and we were like, okay, we know there's a growing segment of people who don't want their career or work to end when they retire. So how do we enable them to go and do these great things, to build these dreams and come up with potentially great ideas that might change the world? So what we did was we named this kind of use case or experience a passion project type of person. And so what we started seeing where there's a growing segment of these people who are indulging in this aspect of, like, their second life. And we started marketing towards them, and that was the job to be done. We allowed people to take out money against their home in a safe way, I promise, and then use that capital to actually go and pursue a dream. And we saw this actually happen with someone out in Vancouver who started a consumer packaged goods business and ended up distributing via Whole Foods, and then eventually was able to pay back her loan. But we helped her realize her dream. So when I say a job to be done, that's what I mean, or a scenario. You create a situation, and maybe you learn this through seeing how people use your tool. You learn this through user interviews and picking up. That's how I found out about this. We figured out, like, oh, there's this opportunity here for us. And this comes from like deep listening and understanding of your customers. So all of that to say, personas are a good start. Evolve past it when you get a chance. Any questions yet? Feel free to raise your hand at any point.
Nothing in the chat.
No problem. Let's keep going. Awesome. Another very, very important and big part I alluded to earlier is your voice and tone and your visual identity. With over 50% of people connecting with a brand's visual identity from the get-go, it's really key that you have a well-defined visual identity and a voice and tone. Your voice is, how you speak to that audience. Once you have that persona, that target market identified, how do you speak to them? How do you speak to their needs? I was actually just talking yesterday to one of my mentee companies about this, and it's like we had a very good discussion on whether or not to use memes within social media. And it's like, if that's the language that your audience is speaking, then you go ahead and you do it. And these are just like certain words, certain if you're in a different market, if you're working across Canada, US, using US spelling, that's a very big thing. That's your voice and tone. So all of these things do matter and speaks to that audience, and that reflects back to them that they can see themselves in you. And visual identity, from their colors, the logos, is it a fresh look? Is it something that connects to your audience and their needs? All of these things really, really matter. One brand I think that does this very well is Duolingo. they have created such an amazing personality around their brand. And the personification of that mascot, I log in every day hoping to see what the unhinged thing they do next with the bird. And it's funny, right? Because now everybody knows it. And I think that like it's given something completely different to the brand, but it speaks to so many millions of people. So much. I actually recently read an article that a lot of projections for Duolingo's growth were underestimated, but because like just that they would eventually reach a cap with their users, and their current like subscription and payment model would not actively pay back to the level that they're growing. But because of their very smart ad strategy and because of this personification of the brand, I think they've really, really kind of withstood the test of time. Okay, so now we're here. We're at the part that everyone came for, positioning and messaging. But the interesting thing is that if you do not have all the other pieces in place, if you don't have a target market and you don't understand your buyer yet, you cannot position or message them. So all that work beforehand is so necessary to get to this point, to be effective ultimately. Because if you do not get it right, then your landing pages won't convert, your conversions might be low, you might not be speaking to your audience in the way that you endeavor to. So positioning really helps you tell that story. It helps extend that brand identity into something tangible for your consumers and your target audiences. It's basically carving out a unique spot in the minds of your target audience. It's about differentiating your brand. This is something that's going to continue to come up. It's about perception. It's about awareness. And it's having a very well-defined positioning strategy ensure that your brand identity aligns with the values and expectations of your customers. So it's really important that you have a very well thought out positioning strategy based off of pain points, problems, and solutions, and very clear messaging that shows the why. Positioning shapes how a brand identity stands and offers a very clear direction for consumers to understand what you provide them. That's kind of the end goal of your positioning and messaging. It also is how, like, when I say differentiation, it means like, how do you stand up against those in the market? Why should people care about you versus others that you're competing with? And the role of messaging. So positioning positions you in a certain way in the market, and messaging shares the how. How do you do this? You're making this, you're making this big claim that you're able to, cut down payment processing time by a certain amount. How do you do this? And how are you going to do this for me? And so it's the how behind what your product does. And it will also kind of give more clarity to your consumers about how you do, how it works behind the scenes. So it involves crafting a narrative that conveys the unique value and benefits that your brand offers, and it's tailored to meet the needs of your audience. So this is the thing as well, like when you need to know your target audience and build those personas, and you have to understand a lot of their problems and their pains at this point to be able to speak to the things that they need, the things or the jobs to be done through your product. And effective messaging translates your brand identity into language that speaks directly to your customers and compels them to engage and buy with you. Yes, so it's very, very important. It's a natural progression. It kind of is like taking that brand identity, the brand promise, and putting in a way that actually is tangible and understandable to your specific audience. I love this quote. It's by April Dunford, who is, I think, one of the most brilliant women I've ever met. And we'll talk a little more about her in the presentation, but positioning should be the first thing we figure out when we're going to market, because it lays the foundation for everything else we do in marketing. It's the context for everything. So for a brand to to thrive, to actually make it in such a busy marketplace, it must be supported by a foundation of strong positioning and clear messaging. And this really will set the bedrock and ensure that your brand not only stands out against your competitors, but it speaks to your consumers. And honestly, like, it's going to be constantly evolving. It's very important to continue to keep it flexible and be open to it changing and evolving over time, because the needs of your consumers will change accordingly. But it is the first thing that you should be doing. So what's your startup's position? You can take a couple minutes if you'd like and jot down maybe some answers to these three and throw them into the chat. It's sometimes can be really scary to put your brand into words or your offering into words. So don't think too much about it. I've worked with a lot of startups that are just like, we don't even know where to start. We don't even know what we offer, how to articulate it. But answering these three questions, even in jot notes, can give you some semblance of an understanding of how and where to go. And because this area is typically can be overlooked, we maybe get analysis paralysis and we maybe want it to be perfect. But again, this is absolutely going to be one of those things that's constantly evolving, changing based off the needs. Also, you think about when you're growing your company, if you're like a SaaS product, you might be offering a new product as part of your suite. You will need to reposition, you'll need to refine that over time, right? So this will be one of those things that will change over time. And so, and it's really important to be able to articulate what your brand can do through positioning, because like I said earlier, it can mean the difference between like someone who converts and doesn't, who opens your emails and doesn't. It like if your ads don't perform, positioning could be the reason why it's not performing.
All right, folks, I'm going to request you to either just unmute and you can share the three responses that are on the screen. I don't want to pick anybody. So it's best if you guys just come forward and share with us.
And it's okay if not. I know it can be scary, but this is one of those things I think like sometimes if you don't already have it, you just need to jump in and do it because
Yeah.
it's not going to get easier if you just wait.
Karen, I'm wondering, do you want to share? Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's
Are you
okay.
talking to me?
I'm really just getting started with my business. So I'm just, I would love to share, but I don't have too much to share at the moment. I'm more just taking it in, but thank
Yeah,
you.
of course. Okay, here's one. So nutritious beverages with emphasis on protein, fiber, and iron. Our products are free from preservatives. Health enthusiasts and those looking for dairy and nut-free beverages. That's great. That's a really, like, I automatically get an idea about why you're different. I understand that, like, I love the, like, immediately I know there's protein. This is different. This is different. I flag that as a consumer. I'm somebody that is always struggling to get enough protein. So hearing something like this would draw me in immediately. So that's great because you pick something that's so unique, like, this is what's different. You've highlighted that. And somebody like me, who I think I might be in your audience, actually, I might be a buyer for you, would absolutely go towards something like this. And it's very clear. It's very clear. Nice. And Fund Evolve is a platform that takes away sorry that it's rolling. Sorry, my chat keeps going up as people respond. Hi Zainab. So Fund Evolve is a platform that takes away the financial mental load from women so that they can build a work optional lifestyle. I love that. I hear that there is a pain point there. That the financial mental load, very clear. How you do it, think you could work on that? What's the platform do to help actually achieve that? Could be something that you improve on there. But I get right away that you're speaking, again, I think I'm in your market. We've talked about this. I'm in your market. I would totally use something like this. And I love the idea of that work optional lifestyle. That's really cool because I think it's speaking to a very big trend that's happening these days, right? People are moving towards that. Remote work has opened that up for us all. Really exciting stuff. So my only suggestion for that one, just the how. How are you doing it? That could even come even deeper as you build out some of the messaging. And it might differ based off of your products. That's always going to evolve though. Okay. Hi, Sarah. You're a retail business consultant. You help busy independent retailers bring order to chaos. We help them sleep better, be better, and make money. Ooh, I like that. I like that. So I immediately see who you're speaking to. Busy independent retailers. Love that bringing order to chaos, because I am also a fractional consultant, so I understand that. It really resonates with me, even though I'm not a retail business, I'm not in retail. But I think this is really great because you identify that maybe they're not sleeping, maybe they want to grow. And what does be better mean? It feels like anyone can connect with that. I would suggest with some of your messaging based off of your personas, eventually you flesh out what that means a little bit more, what be better means, because I think it's not specific enough to speak to someone's exact pain point, but it's big enough that you can capture a lot of people at the beginning. That's really great. Thank you for sharing. Oh, through implementation of strategies, systems, and processes. Very nice. That's the how. Beautiful. Nice addition. Okay, awesome. Oh, Ramana, hi. Ase is one of the only Ayurvedic skincare brands that has a customized approach to skin. We help people truly connect to their mind, body, and spirit through one of the oldest holistic health modalities, Ayurveda. I love that. Very clear. I also like the exclusivity immediately. I'm like, oh, so there's no one else like you on the market. So that's a differentiating factor as well. Awesome. And then the whole idea of the customized approach, that's really big too. And I think that's really appealing because, again, at that point, you don't necessarily need to be so specific with this. And as I said earlier, that whole idea of be better with Sarah's response, like as you get into the messaging, Ramana, and as you build out kind of like your personas a little bit more, you can speak to that a little bit more as well, like the customized approach, what that means for individual people, what the process behind it looks like. How do you do it? Is it a quiz? Is it samples? You get like a sample pack or something like, so there's stuff you can do here to kind of flesh that out and be more clear and specific about the how. Thank you for sharing. Thank you, everyone. I know that can be scary to put it out there into the world. I know I struggle too sometimes with some of the businesses I've started or I've worked with. But really great starts. And as we move through the presentation, there'll be other opportunities as well for you to pick up some stuff to add in and some ideas. All right. So I know this is not easy. So just again, really just commit yourself to the idea that's going to change. That's like my biggest piece of feedback. So here we go. This is the biggest piece of it. You know, you're going to build that positioning. You're gonna you have assumptions. You're a business owner, and you're gonna know that, you know, you've obviously built this business for a reason. You've seen a need. Maybe the need was you needed this, and you didn't have a something to do. You didn't have fund evolved. I think about a lot, Zainab, and I think about like, I would love something like that. So I see and understand, I heard your pitch. So I see and understand why you built something like that. To build the initial positioning, you obviously need to know your target audience, but again, as it grows and changes, you're going to have to throw it into the market, collect that market feedback. And this could be through a myriad of different ways. So you could do things like interviews, you can do surveys, market research, like surveys that are like face-to-face one-on-ones. You could do market research surveys through like Google Forms, things like that. One thing I did for the fintech I worked at, we literally just went through, we had a massive ad campaign, and like there were tons of comments. We always had comments. What we did with that data, we go through all of our social media posts, all of our ad comments, all of that stuff, take that and like pull all that information back into our messaging. We try to understand pain points, confusion around the product, to educate. So all of these data points are really important. Then all that gets back into the positioning as well. From there, you can do analysis and insights, which I think is like not only the most crucial step, but probably the most exciting, because sometimes things come up that you had no idea, like that might present itself about how you position, or just like even things about your product that you didn't even realize were important to somebody until you get that feedback. And now again, will change your positioning and your messaging over and over again. So you throw yourself back into a refinement and then throwing it back into market. And this will be back and forth over and over. And like, I'm gonna really hammer this home. I've worked at like, you know, when you get to like a Series A all the way to potentially a Series B company, you hope to have your positioning and messaging at a certain point, because you're obviously making, you have product market fit, you're making a certain amount of money. Truthfully, I've been in many startups where like at that level where we've had to redo things, or we have to constantly be changing that. So get very comfy with the iterative cycle. So if things keep changing around the brand and your positioning, how are you ensuring that your brand is agile? This is really big. You have to always tie it back to your brand essence. What's your core values, your core mission, making sure that that's stable. The reason like why you started the company, which is in your brand identity as well, that will stay stable as you iterate through your positioning and messaging. So never fear that you're going to be impacting that. As long as your brand essence stays the same, you're good to go. Keep in the loop of trends, understanding, the market, society changes, all of those things. This will help you keep agile. And creating an environment of continuous improvement is very important as well. So, a lot of these things are subject to change all the time, and create feedback cycles. So speak with prospects, clients all the time. When I was running marketing departments full time, I would allot 5 to 10 hours a month to talk to existing customers, churned customers, and to even prospective customers, even if they weren't naturally in my persona. I would take an opportunity to understand, like, why aren't you buying? Why wouldn't you buy something like this? Why wouldn't you use something like this? So create a culture of flexibility on your team, and encourage learning. Use customer stories and testimonials to guide your positioning, and keep flexible. It will be a differentiator for you if you're able to be quick with your iteration. So like I said, just some practical steps for you. Develop feedback loop with your customers. That could be surveys, that could be product reviews. Analyze your competitors regularly to identify gaps and opportunities, and experiment with messaging and visual identity elements in small scale tests. So I would always suggest start with like one small change if you don't know where to start. If you hear feedback, take that, change it, maybe it's a word, and then update that. There's a lot of tools which I'm going to be sharing some in the follow-up email, where you can do things called A/B testing on your website, or even just like how to set it up to understand, like, maybe we're going to try this new tagline on our hero on our website, but we don't know if it's going to work because we've heard feedback that's not clear. You can create 2 landing pages with a tool like Optimizely, for example, and then see within a time frame like a 2-week sprint which one performs better, and then use that as a data point. I've also been known to do small scale ad buys to test out to see what would have more clicks. So you could do something like, I have a $50 budget. I'm just gonna throw in this new positioning and see if it works, and see how it performs. So you can do, like, it doesn't mean that you have to break the bank to be able to do these things, just continuously be testing. So I mentioned a few of these, but just a reminder, some surveys are great, interviews are great. Incentivized interviews have always helped me. You can also reach out to your community. People are willing to give you feedback all the time. Social media analytics, I say this one with a caveat. The base of it would be that you would have to have some audience already to understand the analytics of what you're posting. I mean, if you have 5 followers at this point, you're not probably going to get the depth of information that you need. And then competitor analysis is a very, very big part of it. Tools like SEMrush, Ahrefs, have free tools to see competitors. And then when you pay, you can actually see ad spend. You can see traffic to specific pages, see how they're messaging. And I'm a big fan of not reinventing the wheel. I think there's an opportunity here as well to like learn and then be able to, go and build something similar or better. So stay flexible. Markets evolve. Startups must adapt. Adapt or die. It's probably just built into being a startup owner. You have to. Early feedback is crucial and can lead to significant changes in how you present your brand. And flexibility allows for pivoting without losing your brand's core identity. Okay, so we're going to jump into the second section of this, where we kind of talk about crafting a powerful value prop. So what is a value proposition? We kind of talked a little about it. It is, a clear statement that explains how your product solves your customers' problems, delivers on specific benefits and brand promises, and why it's better than the competition. So that differentiation factor is back again. So it has to be specific. And I mentioned some of these things when I was going through some of your positionings that you shared with me. So specific, pain-focused, and exclusive. So I really loved what Romana shared about being exclusive, being the only one. It's very important to hook in people that way. They also want to feel special. I think that's a really big thing. There's FOMO, there's feeling like you're like part of something bigger and exclusive is always a good sell. And it really, like, I would say that, you know, a strong value prop serves two main functions. Like, it communicates the primary reason a product or service is suited to the customer. And it really, like the next one, which is the biggest one, it differentiates you in the marketplace. Here's a few examples of strong value propositions. You know, it's not a slogan, a tagline, or a mission statement. You know, it's just like, you know, Uber, the smartest way to get around. Like, it's a value proposition. They help you get around. It's smart, you know, very clear. Be more productive at work with less effort. I don't know. I've been using Slack for like 10 years. I think it actually gives me more work. I don't know. Maybe everyone here can also agree with that. I go on my Slack and suddenly I have 10 more things to do. And you know, Apple iPhone, I feel like Apple branding is right? Chef's kiss. We all love it. We can all learn from it. They're exceptional. The experience is the product. All of these different brands are very well known, but they have very strong value propositions that they've built out. So here, how do you determine the difference between a value proposition or a positioning statement? So you can see here, the value proposition, we offer high energy group fitness classes led by certified instructors in a supportive community environment so you can achieve your fitness goals and feel your best. Positioning, on the other hand, is how you're going to be speaking. So the value proposition lives internally. Positioning is how you're speaking to your customers. So you can see it's a little bit longer. So for busy working professionals in the city who want to stay fit with minimal time commitment, our high intensity interval training gym is a fitness studio that provides efficient and effective full body workouts in 30 minutes. Unlike traditional gyms, we use heart rate technology and experienced trainers to maximize calorie burn and fitness gains in minimal time. You see how much more depth has been added and clear value props throughout. Like, we save you time. We help you achieve results. Oh, is everything okay? I feel like I'm jamming a bit.
You did for a bit, but I think you're fine now.
Okay, I am so sorry about that. So,
No.
pulling back a bit. So what I said was very, very specific. You can see right off the bat, like, they're offering, they say immediately 30 minutes, full body. Oh, I know exactly, as a customer, I have no time. I'm so busy. I'm trying to fit in my workout after a long day at work. I also don't have a lot of time to spend. This would be perfect for someone like me, right? So you can see the difference between what some of you shared in the chat and kind of going a little bit more in depth, being more specific, more pain point focused. And this is what will connect you to that audience and their specific pain points and needs. And so here's the difference between a value prop and a slogan. So De Beers, I am absolutely not a fan of this brand, but I wanted to share it. It is, they have some conflict stuff happening with their diamonds, but so the value proposition is exquisite diamonds, world-class designs, breathtaking jewelry. The slogan, a diamond is forever. Slogan will be more of a marketing thing. And so when we look at value proposition versus mission statement versus slogan versus tagline, Nike. I love Nike. I think their branding is great. I have some issues with their politics, but I really do like their branding. And so the value proposition, customizable performance or lifestyle sneakers with unique colorways and materials. Cool. Mission statement, to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. Slogan, twice the guts, double the glory. Tagline for marketing, we know it all, just do it. You don't even see the words anymore. You see the swoop and you just know it, right? That's very strong stuff. But now you can see kind of the difference between each of those and why a value prop and positioning also differ in terms of depth. Okay, so I had mentioned April Dunford before. I love her work. I also love Simon Sinek. I think for a little while he was everywhere, but I'm pretty sure many of you are acquainted with his work. He's well known for his, I think has like millions of views. It's called Start with the Why. It's a video, which I will share afterwards, and some resources around April as well. But I believe that these two people have very good methodologies for you to figure out how to build strong positioning. And I use this myself with all the brands I work with. I call them the OGs. So Simon Sinek, he's very famous, like I said, for start with why. And I like using his framework because he cares very much from an emotional standpoint. He tries to hook you through connection, emotional connection. And for many of you, you already probably have the why. You probably know why you started the business you did. Like, why does this matter to the people in society, to your audience? Identifying your why is your first step. I really, really, really think this is a very important part. Like, why are you building? Why have you built? Communicate how you achieve your why. And then from there, specify what you offer as a company. And I think having this kind of framework will be coming back to like more of the heart of the matter. And so basically, I really love his work because I think that, it's about purpose and it's about that whole idea of going back to values. And as I mentioned earlier, the next generation of consumers, not next, but the current generation of consumers are already buying with their values. So speaking to your why is very important. So it introduces emotional connection. It shows differentiation about like why you're doing the things you're doing. And it will also help with your customer loyalty. Now, April, on the other hand, has a more pain point specific approach when coupled, in my opinion, with Simon is killer. So she had her methodology emphasizes understanding the competitive context, going back to the idea of differentiation, the competitive context to highlight your product's unique capabilities and it's the distinct value that it offers. So it's about that problem solution. It's like, we have the solution for you. We know you have this problem. I despair to repeat it, but when I worked out a B2B company, one of the salespeople said, "What's the customer's bleeding neck wound?" And the imagery has not left my mind to this day. And now you can go forth and use that too. But this idea of like, what is the most urgent problem that you need to solve? And April's methodology speaks to that. Urgency, understanding of the pain point, and providing that solution with imagining that your product is the solution to that wound that that person is feeling. And how are you going to help them solve it? And breaking it down as simple as possible, you look at the problem that your audience faces, plus the solution, plus the differentiator, and there's your value proposition. Very simple formula from April Dunford. So under her methodology, she really highlights why customers should care, which, it's mostly about, identifying all the benefits that your product offers and helps you identify and determine which ones are, unique to your product. Again, all about competitive placement and advantages here. And then connecting those unique benefits to the specific customer needs. And then from there, you can craft your statement. So like I said, you can do either or, you can do both. Also, there's a bazillion other methodologies out there. I just wanted to show you two of my favorites that I've used in the past that have been very helpful for me. And remember, and this is something we're going to go down, I just wanted to mention here, but we will talk about another session. You need to segment your value proposition. So there might be one that you have that's universal for everybody across the board, but then as you understand your audiences more, you might segment further from there. And so we're near the end, and we're just going to do a quick recap, just given that we have less than 10 minutes left, and we can jump into Q&A if you need to. So key points. You need your brand identity to be your foundation. You can't do any of your messaging or positioning until you actually have an idea of who you're speaking to, who you are, and really, really understand the pain points of your audiences. Market research is really important. We talked a little bit about the ways that you can do it. I'm happy to share other methodologies too if anyone's interested, but really important for you at an early stage. And a strong value prop sets you apart, and you need to keep yourself flexible. So I know everyone has gotten these slides already sent to them, so you can dive a little deeper. But just given that we have some time constraints, I'm just going to open it up to some Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Anita. That was wonderful. Uh, Perfect. Let's get your questions coming in. You can leave them in the chat or just unmute and ask the question. So, Anita, I know that you shared lots of information here, and perhaps folks are just mulling over all the content that we've just covered. But to get the conversation started, I did have a question, and I asked this because I work very closely with early stage founders who are in their ideation phase where they're doing their customer discovery. And one question that we often get asked when they're setting up, for example, their marketing plans or their social medias, um, once the ICP has been defined, you said take it further and learn more about your customer. How does that conversation take place? Like, what are they asking from the customer essentially?
Yeah, so I guess like this is like that big part about market research I think is really important. So I really think, and I gripe about this to everybody, I think that one of the biggest failures of a lot of marketing teams and startups is that we don't talk enough to our customers or prospective customers. So I think it's a really great question because it leads me to share things like, okay, there's so many ways to do it, even with like a small budget. So like I mentioned earlier, you can build, if you're just wondering about your persona and you want to learn a little bit more about how they speak, all of these things, I always suggest people do one-on-one interviews with people that fit that profile. So in a free way, you can reach out to people in your life. That's an option. You can rely on communities. You can reach out to maybe someone, like ask a friend. I put together this Google document with a few questions. I'm actually working with one of your portfolio companies right now on that and saying, okay, let's identify this persona for you. Pick 10 to 15 questions, put it in a Google Doc, and from there you can send it out and ask your network as well. Do like ask them for a multiplier effect to share. And if you have a little money, I think that this is also really great. I love doing incentivized user interviews. I've in the past, when I had a larger budget, used userinterviews.com to actually find people in my market. So with the fintech I was working with, we were entering into the US and expanding state by state. I have very little idea about appetites in Colorado. So I used userinterviews.com. It incentivizes user interviews, and you can have one-on-ones with them where you ask specific questions. And they don't necessarily only have to be questions that are about themselves and like their demographics. You can ask them things like, what are your hobbies? Where do you go for information? What's a trusted news source for you? Because you get different cues from things like that. You know where then to market. Like, are they going to be on Reddit? Maybe then you can do an ad campaign on Reddit. If they say, I get all of my financial news, which someone told me in a call, I get it all from Reddit. And I'm like, oh, okay, there. Now I know I'm going to meet you there. I'm going to do an ad campaign there.
Got it, got it. Perfect. Folks, this is your chance, honestly. If you have those questions, put them our way.
Also, you feel free to reach out to me. My email's here. You can text me. I don't know why I put my number there. You can text me if you want. You can also find me on Twitter, or LinkedIn. Please connect with me. I'd love to chat with you. I love talking about this stuff, and I really hope I see you for the next few sessions. We're going to build off what we learned here today, and we're going to take it a step further.
Amazing. That's so well said. Anita, I do have one more question. I'm just curious because you shared the slide about tools and you had some great tools on there, but with everybody hopping onto AI, do you have some tips for leveraging AI to crafting that message and the positioning?
Yeah, so I mean, like, yeah, AI is a great tool, and I'm of the mind where, like, I'm a writer first and foremost, and I have this like little part of me that's like, AI, but I think like get on board because it's here. So just get smart about how you use it. I think it's a good co-pilot, like, yeah, ChatGPT can help you like formulate something to begin with, but you have to really know, like, it's only gonna like spit out something generic based off the information you give it. So have a
Yeah.
really good prompt. But You know what? I never want people to shy away from it if it's going to make your life a little bit easier, but just be more like thoughtful about doing it. Use it as a base, not the only thing. Always edit, and also know that sometimes they're wrong. So you want to validate these things too. So it's like if you're using these tools, which is okay, I'm not going to shame anyone for using them. Just know though that like it's not always going to be 100% accurate. That there's a ton of tools. Like you can do like anything now. There's like video cutting AI, things like that. It's amazing. I've been the solo marketer on a team, and it's made my life so much easier. So I know how good it is.
Awesome. Okay, that's good to know. I see that
Yeah.
Michael's unmuted himself, so let's go to
Yes,
him.
please. Thank you so much, Anita. That was very informative. And I was just going to ask here because my product, like I said, is a beverage which is free from nuts, gluten, and other allergens. But it cuts across different age groups. Like you see people, you see the millennials, you see the older, they're coming, male, female. So in defining, in creating an identity, in actually trying to strategize to my niche market. So how would I be able to determine that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have a session about that, the third session, because I know this is a common problem. And also the last slides, I mentioned universal versus segmented value props. You're going to have to segment them further based off personas for sure. So I think like you're going to speak to their personal problems or their own bleeding neck wound, sorry. So I think like the best way to do that is for you to come to my session and we can talk a little bit more in depth about that. That's the third session, but it is a common problem. I do also, I have other resources which I can share. Alina, I'll share that with you before you send out the other stuff. But Michael, there's like I've written a post specifically about this, talking about kind of like identifying like how do you speak to but not forget all these other audiences, but have one, because we have to remember as well, like across the board, if you try to include everybody in your messaging, you're not going to speak to anybody. So you have to be very specific, right? But you can have one, what I call a beachhead customer. You can have one that you focus on, and everybody else might be like, subsidiary and fall beneath the fold of the website. They're going to have different landing pages. You can have different like ad campaigns leading to them. I think that you don't need to forget about them, is what I'm saying. There's a nice balance that you can do.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I'll see you at the other session. If not, just connect with
Absolutely. I
connect
will.
with
Yeah,
Ethan, and
sure.
we can even talk about it because I've had this issue before too.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. It's been a pleasure speaking with all of you today. I clearly really love this stuff.
Thank you so much, Nita. I know we're at time, so thank you very, very much. This was extremely informative. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. And